Dorian Lake had poured his last $20,000 into buying an abandoned farmhouse in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. He believed he was buying a second chance, a place to start over, a solid foundation for a new life for him and his child after everything had fallen apart. But when he returned after 6 weeks, full of hope and ready to begin building that future, Dorian froze. Smoke was rising from the chimney, and inside the house that was supposed to be their salvation, 2 unfamiliar women were living. What happened next, a moment that lasted only a few minutes, would change the lives of all 4 of them forever. But first, Dorian had to face a choice no one can prepare for. Call the police? Or believe in something irrational? That maybe, just maybe, kindness would lead him down a different path. Before we continue, if you're watching up to this point, let us know where you're tuning in from around the world. And remember to hit subscribe so you don't miss the heartfelt stories just like the one you're about to see next. So, what did Dorian choose? And why could one single decision change everything? To understand why Dorian made that decision, we need to rewind, back to 14 months earlier. At that time, Dorian Lake had everything. A small but stable architecture consulting firm, a 2-story house in the suburbs, with a garden his wife, Dana, personally tended. And most importantly, a peaceful, complete little family with Dana and their daughter, Elise. Dana was the kind of person who could turn a bad day into an adventure. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, often from home so she could pick Elise up from school. Dorian still clearly remembered the evenings he came home exhausted after a long day. Dana would greet him at the door with a radiant smile. "Hello, homeowner. Dinner might be a little late. Elise and I are working on a very important project." He would step into the kitchen and find Elise sitting on the floor, surrounded by oddly shaped cookies covered in bright-colored frosting. "Daddy, look!" Elise held up a cookie that he couldn't tell if it was a dinosaur or a dragon. "I made it for you." That was happiness. Simple, ordinary, but complete. Then everything collapsed in an instant. One September morning, Dana was preparing breakfast for Elise. She suddenly gripped the edge of the counter, her face pale. I feel a little dizzy." Those were the last words she said before collapsing to the floor. Brain aneurysm. Sudden. No warning signs. No chance to save her. The doctors told Dorian that Dana was already gone before the ambulance even arrived. So fast she didn't feel pain. But that didn't make his grief any easier. Because he didn't just lose Dana. He lost the future they had planned. Lost the mother Elise needed as she grew up. Lost half of his soul. The months that followed, Dorian tried to keep everything from falling apart. But grief didn't let him focus. Work plummeted. He missed meetings, delivered projects late. Clients left. Employees quit. Then came the bills. Medical bills, insurance covered most, but not all. Mortgage, electricity, childcare, and worst of all, he no longer had a stable income. In March, the bank sent a notice. He had 60 days to pay the mortgage, or the house would be foreclosed. Dorian sat in the empty kitchen where Dana used to bake with Elise, holding the paper with trembling hands. He looked around at the home they had built with love. Every small corner soaked in memories of Dana. But what did keeping the house matter if he couldn't provide for his child? April. Dorian sold the house, sold the furniture, sold Dana's car. He kept only an old truck, a few boxes, and $20,000, the last of what remained after paying debts. And one desperate decision: leave Detroit. Go somewhere cheaper, where he could start over. He found Pine Hollow Farm on a cheap real estate website. An abandoned farmhouse in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Price, $20,000. The online photos were terrible. Old, weathered house, peeling paint, grass growing up to knee height. But it had one crucial thing. It was his. No bank, no debt. A foundation to rebuild his life. Dorian drove to Doylestown to inspect it. He stayed only 30 minutes, enough to confirm that the house was still standing, the water and electrical systems intact, though not working, and that no one was occupying the property. He signed the paperwork, transferred the money, and planned to return 6 weeks later after wrapping everything up in Detroit. That was the biggest turning point in his life. 6 weeks later. A late May afternoon. Dorian's old truck rumbled along the dirt road leading into Pine Hollow Farm. Sunset settled over the Pennsylvania countryside, tinting the sky with soft purple and gold. Dorian had driven 5 straight hours from a cheap motel on the outskirts of Philadelphia. Every muscle in his body ached, but he didn't care. They had arrived. This was their new home. "Is that our house, Dad?" Elise's voice rose eagerly from the passenger seat. Dorian smiled despite his exhaustion. "Yes, sweetheart. That's—" He froze. His heart pounded. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. Smoke. Smoke was rising from the chimney. He slammed the brakes, stopping the truck about 20 meters from the house. The engine kept running, but his mind spiraled. Someone had been here. Someone was inside the house. "Dad? Why are we stopping?" Elise asked, her voice anxious. Dorian forced his voice to stay calm. "Elise, stay in the car, okay? Daddy just needs to check something. But be good. Listen to me." He patted her hand lightly. "Just 1 minute." Dorian opened the door and stepped out. The evening wind brushed cold across his face. The faint smell of wood smoke lingered in the air, so clear, so real he could feel it in every nerve. Squatters? Vandals? Teenagers looking for a hangout spot? He moved toward the front door, step by step, slow and alert. The door was ajar. Dorian placed his hand on the edge of the door and pushed gently. And he stopped breathing. The main room had been cleaned. The floor no longer bore the thick layer of dust he'd seen the first time. The stone fireplace, the one he thought was broken, blazed with fire. The broken windows were carefully covered with cardboard and plastic, taped securely to block the wind. And in the center of that room stood 2 young women, frozen, their eyes wide with fear. They looked almost identical. Small-framed, blonde hair tied in ponytails, faces pale. Like 2 mirrored versions of the same anxiety. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then one of them stepped forward, hands raised as if surrendering. Please don't call the police. We'll leave right away. We just needed a place to—" "Who are you?" Dorian's voice was sharper than how he actually felt. Inside, he was just as shaken as they were. The other woman instantly stepped forward to shield her sister. "We're so sorry. We thought this place was abandoned. We've only been here a few weeks. We didn't break anything, I swear. We'll leave immediately." Dorian looked around carefully. The floor was spotless, the windows covered with meticulous care. Years' worth of accumulated trash, gone. And the fireplace, not just working, but tended, clean, safe. "How did you know about this place?" he asked. The first woman hugged her arms tightly, her voice trembling. "We used to live near Doylestown. Everyone knows this place has been abandoned for years. We didn't think anyone bought it." "Dad!" All 3 flinched and turned. Elise stood at the threshold, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her brown curly hair messy. Her eyes didn't look at the 2 women with fear, but with innocent curiosity. "Elise, I told you to stay in the car. I know, but it's cold. And I saw smoke. I thought we could start a fire, too. She tilted her head, studying the two women. Are you going to live with us? The question hung in the air like smoke that hadn't yet disappeared. No, sweetheart. We're leaving. One of the women answered quickly. We're really sorry. We'll be out of here in 10 minutes. But Elise stepped farther into the room. She held her small hand toward the flame to feel the warmth. It's so warm here. Much better than in the truck. She looked up at her father. Can they show you how to make the fireplace work? You said it was broken. Dorian felt something shift inside his chest. He looked at his daughter. She had lost her mother 8 months ago, had slept in cheap motel rooms for weeks, had watched her entire life sold off piece by piece, and yet here she was, still standing, offering kindness as simple and pure as a small flame that never goes out. Then he looked at the two women, really looked at them. They were afraid, not just of him, but of something deeper. The fear of people who no longer had anywhere to go. No one left to trust. And Dorian understood that, because he had seen that same look in the mirror for many months now. Sit down, Dorian said, his voice noticeably softer. The two sisters glanced at each other, a moment of hesitation, tension tight, like an overstretched string. Please, he added slowly, just sit down first. Let's figure out what's going on. But inside Dorian, a fierce battle was rising. I should call the police. This is my house. I have every right. They're trespassing. But then another voice, weaker but persistent, slipped in. Look at them. They're not dangerous. They look desperate. Dorian remembered the moment he held the foreclosure notice from the bank, the moment his world collapsed beneath him, the moment he felt he had failed. Dana, Elise, and himself. He remembered the times he sat in the truck, counting loose change to see if they had enough money for food the following week. The pitying look from the motel manager every time he paid with crumpled bills. They, the two girls in front of him, were living in that same feeling, or worse. All right, Dorian said, almost as if reminding himself. 20 minutes, tell me. 20 minutes later, all four of them sat around the fireplace. Elise curled up beside her father, fighting sleep, but determined not to miss anything. The two sisters sat opposite them, shoulders still tense, eyes bright with caution, as if they would bolt at the slightest sign. My name is Amani, one of them said, so softly it was almost a whisper. And this is my twin sister, Zaria. Twins, Elise murmured, her voice dreamy. Amani smiled faintly, a rare smile in an evening filled with tension. I'm Dorian, he said, and this is Elise. He paused for a beat, eyes shifting back to the two girls. Tell me your story. The two sisters looked at each other in the way only twins understand, a silent conversation passing through their eyes. Then Zaria spoke, her voice steady, but her hands clasped tightly together. We grew up right near Doylestown, just the three of us, me, Amani, and our mom. Dad left when we were little, so Mom raised us alone. Amani continued, her voice soft but heavy. Mom worked 2 jobs almost her whole life. We rarely saw her rest, but she always said, "You two are why I work. You deserve a better life." Dorian listened, his heart tightening with each beat. We both earned full scholarships to Penn State, Zaria said. Amani was in agriculture. I was in business administration. Mom was so proud she cried through the entire graduation ceremony. Amani wiped the corner of her eye, her voice dropping. We graduated last June. Everything seemed perfect. We had good job offers, a clear plan. Then, in August, she choked. Zaria squeezed her sister's hand and continued. In August, Mom had an accident at the Delaware Valley processing plant, where she worked the night shift. A malfunctioning machine, no safety precautions. She was severely injured in her spine. Mom survived, Amani said, her voice trembling. But she couldn't walk, couldn't work. And the company refused to take responsibility. Dorian felt Elise leaning heavier against him, slipping into sleep. He adjusted her gently, but kept his eyes on the two women. We dropped everything to take care of Mom, Zaria said. We turned down the jobs we had accepted. We thought it was temporary, that she would recover, that insurance would cover things. She let out a short laugh, a laugh without joy. We were naive. The company blamed Mom, said she violated safety procedures. Meanwhile, the medical bills kept rising. We worked 3 jobs between us. I was at Cedar Street Diner, Amani at Mason & Kober Hardware, and any side job we could find. But it still wasn't enough, Amani said. Mom's condition worsened in October. Infection, complications. She was moved to the ICU. The room went silent, except for the crackle of the fire. Mom died on October 23rd. Dorian swallowed. I'm very sorry, he said softly. But in his mind, images of Dana swept over him like waves. The moment she collapsed on the kitchen floor. The moment the doctor shook his head. The moment he held Elise without knowing what to say. Amani continued, her voice rough. The medical debt reached over $80,000. Collections came for everything. The house, the car, anything of value. We tried to fight, but we didn't know the law. We couldn't afford a lawyer. By December, we had nothing left, Zaria said. We slept in the car. Then the car broke down. We couldn't afford repairs. Amani looked down at her hands. Someone at the diner mentioned this farmhouse, said it had been abandoned for years. We thought, just a few weeks, temporary, until we could save enough to rent a place. But no one rents to people without an address, without a guarantor, without employment verification, Zaria said. And when you're homeless, you don't have any of those things. It's a cycle. We've been here 3 weeks, Amani concluded. We were very careful. Only lit fires at night, cleaned every day, didn't break anything, and now we'll go. Dorian looked at them for a long moment. 2 young women who had done everything right, studied hard, earned scholarships, graduated from college, devoted themselves to caring for their mother. And then life took everything. Not because of their mistakes, but because of a cold, unfeeling system. He understood that story too well. He was living his own version of it. How old are you? He asked. 24, they answered in unison. Dorian looked down at Elise's sleeping face, then back at the 2 women. He thought of the damp motel rooms he and Elise had stayed in, of the humiliation of foreclosure, of the morning he sold Dana's necklace, the last piece of her jewelry, just to buy food, the desperation, the exhaustion, the loneliness. These 2 girls had lost their mother. He had lost his wife. They lost their home. So did he. They were trying to start over from nothing. So was he. You cleaned this place, Dorian said slowly. Fixed the fireplace, covered the windows, made it livable. Amani nodded cautiously. I learned fast. I used to help build stage props at school, and I worked on farm repairs when I was in college. An idea began to spark in Dorian's mind. It seemed crazy, unrealistic. But buying an abandoned farmhouse with his last dollars hadn't been realistic either. And that was exactly where he found himself now. This house needs a lot of work, Dorian said, his voice slow and careful, as if every word carried weight. The roof leaks in multiple places. The plumbing is broken. Half the electrical system needs to be replaced. The floors need to be sanded and refinished. It'll take months to make this place truly livable. The sisters nodded, confused, not sure where he was heading. I used to be a contractor, he continued, ran my own company in Detroit. But I lost everything 8 months ago, along with everything else. That's why I bought this place. This is all I could afford. A chance to start over. With Elise. He took a long breath. This was a point of no return. If he said it, everything would change. I need help fixing this place. I can't pay much, almost nothing at first. But if you help me work, you can stay. We'll figure out sleeping arrangements, get proper electricity and water running, make this place functional again. He looked directly into their eyes. You learned building skills. I have labor. And Elise. He glanced down at his sleeping daughter, her breathing steady. Elise will have more people around, besides me. A heavy silence fell. Zaria almost whispered, Are you serious? I'm serious. He nodded. But there are rules. We have to be honest with one another, always. Everyone contributes. And when things get hard, we work through them together. Okay, Amani said, her eyes already glistening. Okay, but why? Why would you do this? You don't know anything about us? That was the question Dorian had wrestled with all evening. He thought of the call from the hospital telling him Dana was gone, of signing the foreclosure papers, of the motel manager's pitying stare, of the absolute loneliness of watching his world collapse with no one there to understand. Because 8 months ago, he spoke slowly, each word pulling memories behind it. I would have done anything, just for someone to give me a chance. So now, I'm giving you one. Zaria shot to her feet and turned away. Her shoulders trembled. Amani moved to her side, and Dorian heard the soft sound of Zaria's sob. Thank you, Amani said quietly, her voice thick. Thank you so much. Dorian nodded, adjusting Elise in his arms. Get some rest. Tomorrow we begin. There's a lot to do. We're not afraid of work, Amani replied firmly. Good, Dorian said. Neither am I. When the sisters went upstairs, Dorian sat alone in front of the fireplace. Elise slept peacefully in his arms, her small warmth radiating through the thin jacket. He stared into the flames, and the inevitable question rose. What did I just do? 4 strangers, a broken house, a nearly empty wallet. He tilted his head upward, as if speaking to Dana. Dana, what do you think of this? The fire danced. Golden light flickered onto his face, and Dorian could almost hear his wife's voice. Warm, steady, full of love. You're doing the right thing, Dorian. You're giving them what we once had. Hope. The first week was chaos. Dorian had forgotten what it felt like to manage a project with no budget, no clear plan, and everything improvised. On the first morning, all 4 of them sat around the old table, the only remaining piece of furniture in the house, with a stack of paper and a pen. All right, Dorian said. Let's list what we need, in order of priority. Zaria, always the organized one, carefully wrote electricity, water, heating system, windows, roof repairs, before spring rain arrives, working kitchen, bathroom. And the amount of money we have is… Amani glanced at Dorian. Almost nothing, he sighed. I have about $2,000 left after buying the house and moving. That's it. A silence as heavy as stone settled over the room. Okay, Zaria said firmly. We'll work, earn money, and only buy what is absolutely necessary. But reality wasn't as simple as the words. To get electricity back, they had to pay the service reconnection fee, $200, plus the first month of electricity upfront, $150. Water, $300 to reactivate a system that had been shut off for years, requiring full inspection. So $650, one-third of their budget, vanished just to get electricity and water. Dorian stared at the numbers in front of him, a pressure tightening in his chest. We're not going to have enough. While waiting for electricity and water to be restored, they lived like primitive people. They drew water from the old well behind the house. Dorian checked carefully to ensure it was safe. They boiled water on the fireplace to do rough washing. At night, temperatures dropped close to -60. They huddled around the fireplace, wrapped in thin blankets. Elise didn't complain, but Dorian saw her small body trembling. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "Daddy, why aren't we staying at a motel?" she asked one night. Dorian's throat tightened. How do you tell a 5-year-old that even motels are beyond your reach? Thankfully, Amani, sitting beside them, gently answered, "Because this is our home, Elise. And soon our home will be better than any motel. It just needs a little time." Elise thought for a moment. "Okay. But I want hot water soon." "We all do, sweetheart," Zaria smiled. "We all do." Electricity came back on the 4th day. When the lights flickered on, the 4 of them cheered loudly. "Light!" Elise jumped. "Daddy, we have light!" A small victory. But to them, it was a turning point. Dorian started inspecting the electrical system. Almost everything needed repairs or replacement. Amani followed him closely, asking non-stop questions. "Why are you using this type of wire, and not the thinner one?" "Because this circuit carries a heavier load. Always design above safety requirements. With electricity, safety comes first." Makes sense. She learned at a remarkable speed. After 2 days, Amani could shut off the power, check current with a multimeter, even do basic wiring. Meanwhile, Zaria walked into town to apply for jobs. She got rehired at Cedar Street Diner, where she had worked before, with a wage of $12 an hour plus tips. Amani applied at Mason & Coeder's Hardware. The store owner, old Frank Mason, eyed her skeptically. "What experience do you have with building supplies?" "Not much, sir, but I learn fast, I work hard, and I'm currently repairing a farmhouse. I can learn from the customers what they need." Frank studied her, then nodded. "All right, 1-week trial. If it doesn't work, I let you go." Amani nearly cried with relief. "Thank you, I won't disappoint you." But the biggest challenge wasn't the work. It was 4 strangers learning how to live under one roof. One morning, Dorian woke up and noticed his tools had been rearranged. Everything was neat, hanging in straight lines on the wall like in a professional workshop. Instead of feeling relieved, he immediately felt irritated. Who touched my tools? He walked downstairs. Zaria was making breakfast, gently stirring eggs in a pan. Who rearranged my tools? His voice came out harsher than he intended. Zaria turned, her eyes wide. I'm sorry. I saw them scattered around, so I thought. They're my tools, Dorian cut her off. I know where each one goes. I don't need anyone helping. Zaria flinched. She stepped back, her hands trembling. I really am sorry. I just wanted... And right then, Dorian realized his tone had been too sharp. He saw Zaria shrink, as if bracing for yelling, eviction, or worse. That familiar reaction of someone who has been pushed out of the last place they were holding on to. He inhaled deeply. I'm sorry, he said, voice lowered. I didn't mean it. I'm not used to someone else organizing my things, but I know you meant well. Zaria gave a small nod. I understand. I won't do it again. After that morning, Dorian gathered the whole household. "We need to set some ground rules," he said, "about personal space, about belongings, about how we communicate. If we're living together, we need to respect one another." They sat down and wrote out simple but essential rules. Don't touch other people's belongings without asking. If something's wrong, say it. Don't hide it. Everyone gets personal space, even if it's just a small corner. We're partners, not boss workers. Small things. But they were the first steps from four strangers becoming a family. A week later, Dorian found Elise crying in the bedroom. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Elise held a small box, the box that held Dana's photos. I don't want to forget Mom," she sobbed. "But I'm scared. I already forgot her smell. I try to remember, but I can't." Dorian knelt down and wrapped her in his arms. His heart felt squeezed until it hurt. "I'm afraid of that too," he whispered. Elise wiped her eyes. "And I like Miss Zaria and Miss Amani, but I feel guilty, like they're replacing Mom." Dorian understood. Elise carried her own grief, but he had been so caught up in survival that he forgot she too needed space to hurt, to remember. "They're not replacing Mom," he said softly. "No one can replace her. But caring about someone else doesn't mean you stop loving Mom. Your heart is big enough for many people." "Really? Really? Very really." They sat together and opened the photo box. Dorian told little stories about Dana, things he had feared would fade with time. How Dana sang off-key but still grinned widely. How she burst into laughter over silly comedy movies. How she made heart-shaped pancakes every Sunday. "We will never forget Mom," Dorian promised. "And it's okay if you like having Zaria and Amani here. Mom would want you to be happy." At the end of the first week, they sat down to calculate finances. Zaria spread her pay on the table. "This week, I earned $180. After food and commuting, I have $120 left." Amani added, "I earned $140. That leaves $90. Dorian placed his amount down. $1,100, all gone. They stared at the total. $1,310. The list of things needed just for next week. $900. "We're running out of money," Amani said quietly. "I know." Dorian rubbed his face. "I need to find work, as soon as possible." But how? He had lost all his contacts in Detroit. In Pennsylvania, he was just a stranger nobody knew. "You can take small repair jobs," Zaria suggested. "Post flyers at the grocery store, the hardware store." Or, Amani hesitated, "I could ask Mr. Frank if anyone in town needs a handyman. He knows almost the whole town." It was a fragile plan, but it was all they had. One evening during the second weekend, Dorian heard soft sobbing coming from the living room. He moved downstairs as quietly as a cat, then froze at the doorway. Zaria was sitting on the floor beside Elise. The little girl was crying, and Zaria held her as if she were her own family. Dorian didn't speak. He stood silently in the dark, listening. "I miss Mom," Elise choked. "I want Mom to come back. Why won't she come back?" "Sweetheart," Zaria whispered, "I know that feeling. I want my mom to come back too. Every day." "Your mom is gone too?" "Yes, in October." Elise wiped her tears with the back of her small hand. "Does it get easier?" Zaria paused. A real pause, not avoidance, but time to find the right words. "It changes. You don't miss her less. But the pain won't stay sharp forever. And you'll find ways to keep your mom close." "How?" "By remembering what she taught you," Zaria placed her hand on Elise's chest. "By keeping her love in your heart. Those things never disappear." Elise sobbed again, But I still want her here. Really here. I know. I want that too. Zarya squeezed Elise's hands gently, not rushing to comfort her, just being there. Your mom wants you to be happy, Elise, she said. She wants you to laugh, play, and live a full life. That's what she always wanted most. Elise continued crying in Zarya's arms. After a while, she looked up, her eyes red and swollen. Are you happy, Zarya? The question made Zarya freeze. I'm trying. Some days are hard, but I have good people around me who help me keep going, like your dad. And you. I help you be happy? Zarya smiled for real. Very much. Sweetheart. Very much. Dorian stepped back quietly so he wouldn't be seen. He climbed upstairs, sat on the edge of his bed, and buried his face in his hands. She understands Elise in ways I can't. Zarya had lost her mother, too. Her grief was fresh, and yet she could sit there, patient and gentle, helping Elise face her own pain. That was courage. That was kindness. And in that moment, Dorian realized they weren't just sharing a roof. They were healing each other. The next morning, Dorian found Zarya getting ready for work. Thank you. Zarya looked up, surprised. For what? For what you said to Elise last night. Zarya froze. You heard? I heard. And I realized I failed. I didn't know how to help my daughter through this. You didn't fail, Zarya said immediately, voice firm. You kept her safe, loved, in the hardest time of your life. That's not failure. But she needs more. She needs someone who can talk about these feelings. And now she has that, Zarya smiled. She has you. She has us. We're doing this together. Dorian swallowed the lump rising in his throat. Tell me about your mom, he said, if you want to. They sat on the front steps. Dawn painted the sky in soft oranges and pinks. Zarya began to talk. She told him about Sandra, the woman who raised 2 daughters alone and made them feel complete, even when they had nothing. The woman who worked herself to exhaustion so they could go to college. The woman who cried through the entire graduation ceremony because she was so proud. Mom was strong, Zarya said, her gaze distant. But soft, too. She could work a 12-hour shift and still come home to bake an elaborate birthday cake from scratch. She taught us that working hard doesn't mean you can't be kind. She sounds wonderful. She was. Zarya took a deep breath. I keep thinking Mom would be disappointed if she knew we ended up homeless, like we let her down. No, Dorian said firmly. You didn't let anyone down. You tried to save her. That's love, not failure. They sat in silence, a comfortable silence only shared by people who were beginning to understand each other. Then Zarya asked softly, What was your wife, Dana, like? Dorian felt the familiar tightness in his chest. But this time, he didn't avoid it. He told her. About Dana, the planner, the one who kept their life organized. About her terrible jokes she laughed at so much they became funny. About how fiercely she loved Elise. So much it scared her. She used to say, I never knew I could love someone this much. If anything happens to her, I don't know how I would survive. Dorian smiled sadly. I told her everything would be fine, that we would keep Elise safe. His voice sank. Turns out, I should have worried about keeping Dana safe. Life is unpredictable, Zarya said gently. I know. Logically, I know. But part of me still thinks I should have done something. That's grief, Zarya replied. It tricks us into believing we control more than we actually do. Dorian looked at her. Really looked at her. In the morning light, she looked younger than 24, yet her eyes carried a depth shaped by loss. How did you get? So wise, he asked. Zaria laughed. From trauma and therapy. Mom made us see a counselor after Dad left. It was the best gift she gave us, teaching us to face our feelings instead of burying them. Maybe I should try that too. Maybe you should. And right there, on the old wooden farmhouse steps, between two strangers who had become confidants, something quietly changed. March passed. The house slowly turned into a home. A real home. One morning, Frank Mason from the hardware store called him. "There's someone who needs a porch roof repaired. Want the job?" Just a small job, but it paid $400. Dorian accepted immediately, without hesitation. He took Amani with him. They worked an entire day, removing rotted boards, replacing them, repainting, cleaning everything. The client, an elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson, watched them work. "Your girl?" she asked, glancing toward Amani. "No, she's my partner. She works well, careful. Hard to find that these days." When they finished, she paid them and added, "If you need more work, I'll tell my friends. This town always needs good hands." That was the beginning, and in the weeks that followed, other small jobs kept coming. Fixing fences, replacing pipes, repainting garages. Not big money, but enough for them to live. On a Saturday morning at the end of March, they decided to deal with the wild patch of land behind the house. Amani stood in the middle of the weeds, hands on her hips, eyes shining like a child seeing magic. "You know what this place needs? A garden." Dorian raised an eyebrow. "A garden? We haven't even finished fixing the house." "I know, but hear me out." Amani looked at him with conviction. "My degree is in agricultural science. I can design a simple vegetable garden. Tomatoes, lettuce, herbs. It saves money, and gardening is actually therapeutic. We all need more therapy." The meaning behind the last line was clear enough without explanation. "Can we plant strawberries?" Elise asked, eyes hopeful. "I love strawberries." "We're definitely planting strawberries," Amani smiled. So they spent the entire day clearing the land. Amani worked while explaining soil composition and drainage systems. Zaria took notes, planning the planting process in stages, true to her nature. Dorian watched the three of them working. Amani lit up when talking about agriculture. Zaria turned chaos into a clean, organized plan. Elise absorbed everything like a tiny sponge. "Dad, look!" Elise held up a worm. "Amani says worms are good for the soil." "That's right," Dorian nodded. "Worms are the garden's friends." "Everything has a purpose if you put it in the right place," Amani said, glancing at him. "People, too." That night, exhausted and covered in dirt, they ordered pizza, a rare luxury, and sat on the porch eating as the sun set. "You know what I just realized?" Zaria said, eyes sparkling. 3 months ago, Amani and I were sleeping in a car, not knowing what would happen. And now, look at us. We have a home. We have work we're good at. We have—" She stopped, too emotional to finish. "We have a family again." Amani raised her slice of pizza like a toast. "To second chances, and abandoned houses. And to people who look at strangers and choose to help instead of judge," Zaria added, looking at Dorian. Elise lifted her juice box seriously. "And to strawberries." Everyone laughed. Dorian felt something warm spread through his chest. Not exactly happiness. He wasn't ready to name it that, but definitely hope. Early May, they reached a major milestone. The plumbing system was fully operational, which meant showers, real hot showers. When the first stream of hot water poured down, Zaria stood under it and burst into tears. "Sorry," she wiped her eyes, laughing through tears. "It's silly to cry over a shower." "It's not silly," Amani said, also choked up. This is the first time we've had hot water in 4 months. Elise didn't fully understand, but she felt the joy. So, can we celebrate? Yes, Dorian smiled brightly. We're celebrating. They went to Cedar Street Diner, where Zaria worked, and ordered real food, burgers, fries, milkshakes. Zaria's co-workers glanced at them like they were trying to piece the puzzle together. Is this your family? One asked. Zaria hesitated. We're family, Dorian said firmly, without hesitation. And for the first time since Dana died, he wasn't just saying it to convince himself. He meant it. Summer arrived in Pennsylvania with warm sunlight, and with changes bigger than the weather. Dorian's reputation in construction slowly returned. One small project led to another. Word spread across town. There's a new worker whose craftsmanship is solid, quality high, prices reasonable. One day, Mr. Brennan, owner of a historic building in downtown Doylestown, called, "I hear you do good work. I have a restoration project. This building was built in 1887. I need someone who knows what they're doing." Dorian went to inspect the site with Amani. They spent 2 whole hours examining every corner. The old timber beams, the stained glass panels, the worn hardwood floors carrying the imprint of time. "Can you do it?" Mr. Brennan asked. Dorian looked at Amani. She gave a slight nod. "We can," Dorian replied. "But it will take time. These kinds of buildings can't be rushed." "Good. I don't want anyone rushing this heritage." They signed the contract, $15,000 for the entire restoration, the largest amount Dorian had earned since losing his company in Detroit. On the way back, Amani asked softly, "You said we. You really think I can handle it?" "I don't think. I know. You have an eye for detail and an understanding of structure not everyone has. You've earned it." That night, Dorian made the decision. "Amani, I want to do this officially. I want you to be my partner." Amani froze, a piece of bread still suspended in her hand. You don't have to do that. You've already done so much for us." "I'm not doing it out of kindness," Dorian cut in. "I'm doing it because you're talented. Not recognizing that would be foolish. This is business. You earned your place." Amani burst into tears. Zaria wrapped her arms around her. Both were teary-eyed. "Thank you," Amani said. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't." Meanwhile, another path opened for Zaria, in a way none of them expected. It started simply. She cooked recipes her mother taught her, made extra portions on her days off, and sold them at the farmer's market. Homemade bread, fresh salads, house-made jams. The locals noticed immediately. "Do you sell anywhere else?" one customer asked. "I want to order for a party." Zaria hesitated. "I don't have a commercial kitchen." "I don't care. This is the best food I've ever had." Her first catering job was a small birthday party with 20 guests. Zaria prepared everything in the Pine Hollow Farm kitchen, so nervous the night before she barely slept. But the party was an absolute success. "Who cooked this?" the host asked. "I want to hire them for my daughter's wedding." One job led to another. By mid-July, Zaria had regular clients and was seriously considering turning it into a full-time business. One evening, she calculated aloud, "If I want to expand, I need a commercial kitchen. Our home kitchen is great for a family, but not enough to scale." "There's a vacant space next to Cedar Street Diner," Amani suggested. "I saw a for rent sign last week." They started planning, calculating, dreaming, and for the first time since their mother died, the twins felt like they were building a real future. Elise turned 6 on a golden, sunny day. They held a backyard party, where Amani's garden had become a magical corner. Tomato vines heavy with fruit, crisp lettuce, and the first ripe strawberries of the season. Elise's kindergarten friends came in full numbers. The parents lingered, drawn to this unconventional but loving family. Dorian stood near the edge of the yard, watching Elise lead a game of tag. Her laughter rang bright and carefree. "She's flourishing," Zaria said softly, standing beside him. "Yeah, thanks to you and Amani. You two stepped in and loved her like it was the most natural thing in the world. It's not hard to love her. Elise is wonderful." "True." Dorian nodded, then said, before he could stop himself, "So are you." Zaria turned, surprised, and something warm flickered in her eyes. Dorian's face heated. "I mean, you're good for Elise, and for both of us. I don't know how to thank you properly." "You already did," Zaria smiled. "You gave us a home when we had nothing left. There's no greater thank you than that, Dorian." They stood still, listening to children's voices and the hum of summer insects. Something unspoken hovered between them, both aware of it, neither daring to touch it yet. When the guests had left, and Elise fell asleep from sugar and excitement, Dorian found Amani sitting on the porch. "Mind if I sit?" "Always welcome." Amani patted the step beside her. They stayed quiet for a moment, the easy silence of people who understood each other. Then Amani spoke plainly. "You should tell her." Dorian's stomach dropped. "Tell who? Tell her what?" "Zaria, that you have feelings for her." Amani smiled at his startled expression. "Don't worry, I'm not upset." "I don't—" "Oh, come on." Amani raised an eyebrow. "I'm her twin. I see everything. And if you want to know, she feels the same." Hope crept into Dorian's voice almost embarrassingly. "Really?" "Really. But she's scared. Scared of messing up what we have. This family matters so much she'd rather swallow her feelings than risk it. What if taking a step forward ruins everything? What if it makes everything better?" Amani held his gaze. "Dorian, you gave us our lives back. You didn't have to. That night, you could have called the police, but you chose to see two desperate women and help instead of punish. That says everything about you." "I was desperate too," Dorian replied. "I know that now." "Exactly. You knew what we needed because you needed it too. And we've built something real here, something good. Don't you think you deserve something good for yourself too?" Dorian thought of Dinah, of the guilt that clung to him, of the question, is it the right time? And whether there is ever truly a right time. "I don't know if I'm ready," he admitted. "Fair," Amani nodded. "But ask yourself this, will you ever feel completely ready? Or will there always be a reason to wait?" She stood, stretched, and smiled as if closing a small chapter. "Think about it. And if you want my opinion, Dana sounds amazing, but I don't think amazing people want the ones they love to stay lonely forever." Amani walked inside, leaving Dorian alone with his tangled thoughts, and just enough courage beginning to spark. 2 days later, Dorian found Zaria in the kitchen at midnight. The kitchen was soaked in a soft golden glow, the lingering warmth of the oven still floating in the air. On the table lay scattered ingredients, scribbled notes, and dustings of flour. "Can't sleep?" he asked. Zaria sighed, giving a helpless smile. "No, too many ideas running in my head." She pointed at a tray of bread. "I'm trying to perfect this herb focaccia for a client. Want to be my tester?" "Always," Dorian replied. She cut him a piece, still warm. The scent of thyme, olive oil, and sea salt blossomed instantly as he bit into it. The crust was lightly crisp, the inside soft and moist. Just right. "It's wonderful," Dorian said sincerely. Your client is lucky. Zaria's eyes lit up. You really think so? I've been making this over and over for weeks. It's perfect. They slipped into an easy conversation, as they always did. They talked about business plans, Elise's upcoming school year, a project Dorian was bidding on. The air between them was comfortable, warm, familiar, as if they'd known each other for years. Then Zaria paused, took a deep breath. Can I ask you something? It's a little personal. Of course. Do you think you could open your heart again? Romantically, I mean. Or is that feeling impossible after losing Dana? The question hung in the silence between them. Heavy. Honest. Dorian could have deflected, could have given a vague answer, could have stayed safe, but he looked at Zaria, this woman who had walked into his life, carrying her own grief, who had helped Elise through nights of missing her mother, who had become essential to their daily existence. And he chose the truth. 6 months ago, he said slowly, I would have said no. All I felt then was pain. But lately, he met her eyes. Lately, I've realized that pain doesn't mean you stop living. And maybe Dana wants me to live. Really live, not just survive. She sounds like she was wonderful, Zaria said softly. She was, but she's gone. And Elise, we're still here. We deserve to move forward, not to forget, but to make room for new things, beside the memories. Zaria nodded, her eyes shimmering with understanding. When my mother died, someone told me that the people we love don't want us trapped in grief. They want the love they left behind to be the foundation of a better life. I didn't believe it at first. But now I think it's true. I think so too. The kitchen fell quiet, except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Then Zaria spoke very softly, as though afraid to break something delicate. I have feelings for you, Dorian, for a long time. But I didn't dare say anything, because I didn't want to ruin what we have. This family, what we built. It's too important to risk. Dorian felt his heart strain against his ribs. And what if it doesn't ruin anything? He asked quietly. What if it makes everything better? Do you believe that? He didn't answer with words. Instead, Dorian reached across the counter and took her hand. Her fingers were warm, dusted with flour, gentle but firm. I think, he said, each word deliberate, that you're one of the best people I've ever met. I think you walked into my life right when I needed someone who understood loss. I think Elise adores you. I think what you're building is incredible. He paused, but didn't let go of her hand. And I'd be a fool not to see that we could be something. Tears glimmered in Zaria's eyes, her lips trembling slightly. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I. He squeezed her hand. But maybe we can be scared together, a little at a time. No rushing, no pressure, just honesty. I want that, she said, softly but surely. They sat like that for a long while, hand in hand, in a kitchen scattered with flour and unfinished recipes, inside a farmhouse none of them ever planned to call home. But somehow, it had become exactly that. Finally, Zaria smiled, her eyes still slightly red. So, do you want to help me perfect this focaccia? I still have 3 more versions to test. Dorian laughed. I can't think of anything I'd rather do. The rest of summer, and then autumn, felt like an entirely different life compared to what Dorian had lived a year before. The relationship between Dorian and Zaria grew slowly, carefully, as if the two of them were tending to something fragile and immeasurably precious. They began having real dates, simple dinners in town, outdoor movie nights, long hikes under canopies of forest leaves. They held hands on the back porch after Elise went to bed, sharing fears, hopes, memories, and possible futures. Elise noticed immediately. Of course she did. Nothing escaped her. "Are you and Miss Zaria boyfriend and girlfriend now?" she asked one morning, her tone as casual as if she were asking about the weather. Dorian nearly choked on his coffee. We care about each other very much." "Are you okay with that?" he asked. Elise thought seriously about it. "Does it mean she'll stay forever?" "Do you want her to stay forever?" "Yes," Elise said without hesitation. "She makes great pancakes. She helps me brush my hair. She doesn't get upset when I ask too many questions. And she makes you laugh more. You didn't laugh that much before." Out of the mouths of children, Dorian thought. Then yes, sweetheart. If she wants to stay forever, she can. Good. Can I have more orange juice? When winter arrived, both businesses flourished. Lake and Hayes Restoration, the name Dorian and Amani chose. They had a reputation in town. Good work, fair prices, attention to detail. They hired another worker, Andre, a young man fresh out of high school, eager to learn the trade. "You and Miss Amani gave me a chance," Andre said during the interview. "I'll work hard, I promise." "We know," Dorian replied, feeling a deep sense of kinship. "We were once exactly where you are." And Time and Grace Kitchen, Zaria's catering business, exploded in success beyond anything they expected. She rented the small storefront next to Cedar Street Diner and turned it into a professional commercial kitchen. Amani designed the space. Dorian handled the construction. Andre installed shelves and cabinets. It was a family effort, each person contributing their part, each taking on responsibility. On the day the shop opened in early December, the whole town seemed to show up. Frank Mason brought a potted plant. Mrs. Patterson brought a handmade wooden sign. "Congratulations on the grand opening." Even Mr. Brennan came, nodding in approval at the clean, professional layout. "You've all come a long way," he said. "I'm proud of you," Zaria cried. Amani wrapped an arm around her. Marcus grinned brightly. Elise darted around in excitement. Dorian held his daughter close, looking at the two young women who, a year ago, he had found frightened inside an abandoned farmhouse. Now they were strong, confident, thriving. Look at them now, he thought. Look at all of us now. By December, when both businesses had stabilized, they began looking at houses around town. Pine Hollow Farm had served its purpose. But winter was approaching. The heating system was still basic, and they needed more space, not just to live, but to continue growing. They found a house near the center of Doylestown. Not luxurious, but solid, warm, properly insulated, with 4 spacious bedrooms, a large kitchen for Zaria's cooking and catering, a garage big enough for Dorian's tools and projects, a backyard where Amani could plant vegetables, flowers, and pursue the small projects she loved. "Are you sure?" Amani asked, as the three of them stood in the living room, winter light spilling through the windows. "We're not leaving Pine Hollow," Dorian said. "We're just moving forward." "That's different." They moved in January, and somehow, everything fell into place naturally, as if the house had been waiting for them all along. The new home didn't have Pine Hollow's history, but it carried a familiar, gentle feeling, and it immediately became part of their family. On a freezing winter afternoon in January, Dorian and Zaria were married at the town hall. A small ceremony, simple but beautiful in its own way. Amani was the bridesmaid. Elise scattered petals, her face serious and determined, as if performing a national duty. Andre stood beside Dorian, proud and emotional to be chosen as his witness. Frank Mason, Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Brennan, and half the town came to celebrate. They had watched this family's journey from the very beginning, and now wanted to witness this moment of joy. When Dorian looked deep into Zaria's eyes to say his vows, he thought of Dana, who had loved him deeply, who would always be a part of him. He could almost hear her voice, warm as summer. "You deserve this joy. Let yourself be happy." When they shared their first kiss as husband and wife, Elise cheered loudly. Amani burst into tears. Everyone else applauded, filling the hall with sound. Not a fairy tale. Something better. It was real. It was enduring. It was built from pain, patience, and the choice to stand beside each other every day, through difficulty and through ease. One evening in March, almost exactly 2 years after that fateful night, Dorian sat on the porch of their real home. Zaria sat close beside him, her hand resting gently in his. "Do you ever think everything could have been completely different?" Zaria asked softly. "If you had called the police that night?" "Yes," Dorian answered honestly. "Sometimes. But then I remind myself, what would be the point? This is where we are. This is what we built." "We built something beautiful," Zaria smiled. "We did," he said, giving her hand a small squeeze. They sat in peaceful silence, the kind that only exists between two people who truly understand each other. Then Zaria spoke again. "Thank you for seeing us, when you could have seen only intruders." "Thank you," Dorian replied, "for being brave enough to stay. For not running before I walked in." Zaria let out a quiet laugh, the familiar kind. "Where would we even go?" Inside, Elise laughed, a bright, joyful sound that made all three of them smile. She was 7 now, taller, more confident, quick-witted like her mother, and steady like her father. She had Amani teaching her how to build wooden shelves, and Zaria showing her how to cook. She had a father who had walked through loss, but still carried the ability to love fully. And she had a family she never had to question. To Elise, love was simply the most natural thing in the world. That night, when everyone was asleep, Dorian stood before Dana's photograph. "Do you see us?" he whispered. "We're okay, Dana. Elise is growing beautifully, strong, joyful, so much like you." He touched the frame gently, as if touching a memory. "I hope you're okay with everything. With Zaria. I still love you. I always will. But I love her too. And I think you'd understand." A soft breeze lightly moved the curtain. Dorian chose to believe that was the answer. "You deserve this, Dorian. Live. Truly live. If this story made you smile, made you cry, or made you believe a little more in second chances, don't forget to hit subscribe. I tell stories about compassion, love, healing, and the small miracles that happen when we dare to open the doors of our lives. Stay with me. There are many more stories waiting ahead. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and let's continue this journey together.